Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Kirk Cousins, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 12 quarterback rankings for the 2020 fantasy football season. On today's episode, of course, we're going to be talking about all things related to the quarterback position, beginning with quarterback matchups. So we'll talk about which defenses are giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks thus far this season on average per week in a 4-point per passing touchdown format. And then after that, of course, we'll talk about my top 16 quarterback rankings. Now, before we begin, I want to thank you guys for the incredible support. For those of you who have subscribed to the channel, continue to share my videos with others and continue to help grow this community. Again, for those of you who have not yet already, click that subscribe button. We are on our way to 35,000 subscribers. Click the like button down below. For those of you who haven't yet already, go down into the description of the video and find the Discord server link. For those of you who are not familiar with Discord, again, it's a very user-friendly process. Make an account, join. We're talking all things fantasy football related. Quick shout out to those of you guys in the general chat. For the last couple of days, we've been chatting it up. You guys have been holding it down for me. I really do appreciate you guys helping each other out, answering each other's questions. Don't be toxic. Everybody just relax and just be chill. Otherwise, I'm coming in with the band hammer regardless. Appreciate you guys a lot. Outside of that, while you're down in the description of the video, checking out all that kind of stuff, other links are in there. Patreon for those of you trying to stay up to date on my latest content, trying to get all of your 2020 fantasy football questions answered via Patreon. Outside of that, we're good to go. Timestamps. Rankings are subject to change. We'll have a live stream tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, kickoff with Kirchhoff on Thanksgiving Day. Should be a fun one, so hopefully you'll come and join us. All right, so let's get into this, shall we? Let's talk about some matchups at the quarterback position for Week 12 of the 2020 fantasy football season. As you can see on screen, the Atlanta Falcons are giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks this season, and Derek Carr, coming off a fantastic performance once again against the Kansas City Chiefs, will have a privilege of taking on this defense that, as of right now, really can't stop anybody. Of course, Taysom Hill in his first NFL start was able to dice them up, 18 for 23 passing, over 200 passing yards. He didn't complete a passing touchdown, but again, this is one of the more advantageous matchups. I think Derek Carr will definitely be able to deliver on it. Now, the second easiest matchup at the quarterback position belongs to the Seattle Seahawks, in which Carson Wentz will have the privilege of playing against this week. Now, the question remains, is Carson Wentz a good enough quarterback at this moment in time? He's making a boatload of decisions that are very questionable, throwing a lot of interceptions and just not playing well. The offense has a problem, whether it is in scheme, in theory, and or at the quarterback position. There's a lot of problems with this Eagles offense, and I think there is a potential that even though this is a very advantageous matchup, Carson Wentz could end up faltering and not putting up a great performance here this upcoming week. Just based on his prior performances, nothing is trending in the right direction for him, just too many turnovers. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they'll take on Baker Mayfield. Not too interested in that, but I'm sure he'll throw a passing touchdown and break his 3-game streak of not throwing one. The New York Jets will have Tua. That's going to be a very interesting thing to see. I mean, I think Tua earlier today went from healthy to questionable. That's the notification that I got. So again, it could be if it's magic this week. If that's the case, then we'll go ahead and adjust the rankings. The Dallas Cowboys giving up a bunch of points to opposing quarterbacks. Alex Smith will have the privilege of that. But then again, who's really starting Alex Smith this upcoming week? We have the Los Angeles Chargers, Tennessee Titans, Buffalo Bills, Arizona Cardinals, and Cincinnati Bengals. Again, these are a lot of advantageous matchups. Players like Daniel Jones, Cam Newton, Justin Herbert, Phillip Rivers, these are good matchups. So again, there's a chance that one of your quarterbacks are in these matchups. Just to kind of give you some perspective, we'll go ahead and move on and start talking about some of the tougher matchups this upcoming week. Of course, the Los Angeles Rams will be playing against the 49ers. Nick Mullins, I don't think anybody in your leagues are starting him, unless, of course, you're in a 2QB superflex format and you are in need of a quarterback to come in and play. Nick Mullins, again, is probably one of the, choices that I'd like to avoid, perhaps, just based on the fact that, again, Debo's probably not going to play. They still don't have Kittle out there, and it's at the Rams Stadium. This could be a one-sided affair there. Pittsburgh playing against Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar, even though he hasn't been performing well, will still be a fine quarterback play this upcoming week. Indianapolis Colts playing well against quarterbacks. They just played against Ryan Tannehill a couple weeks back in Week 10, and they pretty much limited him to under 200 passing yards, only one passing touchdown, and of course dominated that game and dominated the time of possession for the majority of that. Then, of course, we have the New York Giants playing against Ryan Finley. The Bears playing against Aaron Rodgers. Good luck to the Bears defense. Whoever starts for the Bears, hopefully it's Nick Foles against the Green Bay Packers. But either way, these are some of the tougher matchups going into this upcoming weeks. games. So now that we've covered that, we can move on to our top 16 quarterback rankings on the week. Starting off with my number one, we have Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, again, he's coming off a great performance, ended up leading his team to a victory late in that game on Sunday Night Football against the Las Vegas Raiders, put up 348 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. Unfortunately, there wasn't as much upside as we potentially would have wanted and or predicted. There were 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 from Clyde Edwards-Helaire and 1 from Le'Veon Bell that definitely did eliminate some of the value and upside of Patrick Mahomes this past week. But that being said, this upcoming week they take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just looking at how well Travis Kelce's playing and Tyreek Hill's playing and how badly the Tampa Bay secondary was getting torched by the combination of course, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods just this past week, makes me think that this Tampa Bay secondary could be in trouble. Also, looking at the last couple performances from quarterbacks against the Tampa Bay defense, even though they can stop the run as well as just about anybody in the National Football League, they are still giving up a lot of points to quarterbacks. Of course, Jared Goff unfortunately threw a couple turnovers, but still had 3 total touchdowns. Teddy Bridgewater in the game a week prior had 3 total touchdowns against Tampa Bay's defense. And then the week before that, it was the blowout in which Drew Brees had 4 passing touchdowns and definitely imposed his will on that Tampa Bay defense. So I guess quarterbacks and our offensive coordinators are definitely figuring out how to go ahead and pick apart this Tampa Bay defense, especially when they eliminate the running game for you. And perhaps Patrick Mahomes, who is a gunslinger himself, will go ahead and take advantage of that. He's my number one. Moving on to our number 2, we have ourselves Kyler Murray. So here's the issue that I had with Kyler Murray last week. I mean, sure, he had one of the more advantageous matchups. And even though that is the case, it doesn't mean automatic success for the quarterback position. But obviously, he did have a little bit of a shoulder injury. It definitely did impact his play overall, only having 269 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. I mean, that's great for Kyler Murray. But where he, pretty much kind of eliminated his potential value was the fact that he stopped running the ball. He only had 15 rushing yards. He was getting pressured in the pocket. They sacked him multiple times on multiple drives. I mean, the safety late in the game really wasn't even his fault. He lost an extra possession there. Again, there were many opportunities for Kyler to win that game and even get more fantasy points. But again, his team and the offensive line just really fell apart late in that game and didn't give him said opportunities. But again, I think he'll be able to bounce back this upcoming week. Playing against the New England Patriots, I mean, it's a tough matchup. Again, that secondary with Devin McCourty and Stephon Gilmore, I'm going to mention it all the time when I talk about Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins. These guys are actual stud cornerbacks that are always going to be an impacting, difference on whether or not your quarterback can end up being a great player or just an average play. So this upcoming week, I look at Kyler Murray and I think to myself, what is he capable of doing through the air? Just looking at the opposing quarterbacks that the New England Patriots have faced as of late, Deshaun Watson had 3 total touchdowns, 2 through the air, 1 on the ground. We had Lamar Jackson with 2 passing touchdowns. We had Joe Flacco with 3 passing touchdowns. These are all 3 performances in the last 3 games that the New England Patriots have had. On top of it, another stat that I wanted to mention is how much rushing yards they've allowed to opposing quarterbacks this season. It's unbelievable how many mobile quarterbacks the Patriots have faced. And to be honest, I think this is where Kyler Murray is pretty much going to separate himself this upcoming week. Of course, we know he's a guy that is on pace to surpass 1,000 rushing yards this season, and I think this is one of the games in which he could definitely take advantage of it with his legs. Looking at the performances as of late, Russell Wilson ran for 39 yards against the Patriots this season, while we had Patrick Mahomes, 28 rushing yards, Josh Allen, 23 and a touchdown, Lamar Jackson, 55 rushing yards, Deshaun Watson, 36 and a touchdown. We all know Kyler Murray leads the league in rushing yards, and he should be able to even put up more yardage than these guys and potentially accompany that with a touchdown. I think he'll be a fantastic play this week as my number 2. Number 3 is Josh Allen coming off the bye week. So he plays against the Los Angeles Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers in the last 5 games, in 5 consecutive games, have given up at least 2 touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks. Those were Minshew, Drew Lock, Carr, Tua, and Flacco. If you're going to give 2 touchdowns to all those quarterbacks, my goodness, Josh Allen's going to come and toast you. I mean, he really should be able to impose his will on this defense and just be able to sling the rock to whoever he wants to at this point. I mean, just looking at what he's done in the last 2 games himself prior to the bye week, he was able to score a total of 6 touchdowns against the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. And I know those defenses aren't great, but those are good teams, and he was able to do whatever he wanted. He should be able to once again impose his will on the Los Angeles Chargers secondary. As of right now, looking at what Josh Allen's been trending and doing as of the last couple weeks, he's had 35 rushing attempts in the last 4 games he's played. He's running the ball more in comparison to what he was doing earlier this season. That basically gives him an extra oomph of fantasy value if, in fact, he gets an extra rushing touchdown. If in fact he gets a couple extra yards here and there, a couple design plays, Josh Allen has value innately because of his legs. On top of the fact that he's got Stephon Diggs helping him out a lot this season in comparison to last year, I think Josh Allen this upcoming week against the Chargers should be a fantastic play. We have Deshaun Watson as our number 4, coming off an incredible performance against Bill Belichick's defense. Again, if you go ahead and you beat New England, I think that's the first time he had ever beaten New England in his career. In fact, with 344 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown with 36 rushing yards accompanied by, when you play against New England, you beat them, then you go to play against Detroit. It's a completely different conversation. We're talking about the Detroit Lions, who couldn't stop P.J. Walker. And though P.J. Walker did throw a passing touchdown, also threw an interception in the red zone. So when we think about what Bill Belichick's defense pretty much looks like, and the coaching tree of Matt Patricia, the head coach of, and the defensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, it could be very similar. It might not be that much of a switch for Deshaun Watson to make. During practice this week, he might just be looking at the same keys. He might be looking for the exact same kind of built defense, and it might just lead to his ultimate success because, again, this is back-to-back weeks in which he's facing said defense. It's like playing against when Dan Quinn was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. If you played against the Falcons and the Seahawks in consecutive weeks, it was easier for you because you knew they were going to run that zone defense, in that specific zone defense in which they both like to run. So, again, just giving you some perspective as to how I think he'll perform against Detroit. Should be a one-sided affair. Everybody's betting on the Houston Texans to succeed. I anticipate them doing so. I think Deshaun Watson will definitely be able to carry them to the promised land this week. We have Justin Herbert as our number 5 quarterback. A stat that I wanted to read, which is absolutely beautiful. I think I may have mentioned it last week, but if I didn't, I'll say it again. Since week 4 of the 2020 fantasy football season, Justin Herbert has been the number 2 overall fantasy quarterback. That in itself is an incredible number. In 6 out of his last 7 games, he's had at least 3 touchdowns in each of them. 6 out of the last 7, 3+ touchdowns. The guy is unstoppable, coming off of a performance of 366 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 11 rushing yards against the New York Jets. Of course, he's going to dominate against that team. He will take on another AFC East team in the Buffalo Bills, which, of course, this is a team that does not give up many points to opposing quarterbacks. They have played well against Russell Wilson, against Kyler Murray. But the question remains, where could Justin Herbert stack up along with those quarterbacks? I think Justin Herbert, he's going to be throwing the entire time. If they get Eckler this upcoming week, they'll be throwing even more and getting more contributions out of that passing game in comparison, obviously dumping it off to Kalen Ballage, who may not be going for as many yards as Austin Eckler would be capable of doing. So I think Justin Herbert, even though it is a tougher matchup, still is going to be in the contest. Even if they're getting blown out by 30, he's going to be throwing the majority of the time. He does not turn over the ball that often, and when he's given the opportunity, he scores on a weekly basis. I just think, looking at his last couple performances, where he's finished in a 4-point per passing touchdown format in the last couple weeks, I think it was 9, 4, 1, 5, 4, and 4. He's finishing within the top 5 almost every single week on a consistent basis. He's just greatness at this point. I don't know how else to put it. And you really can't stop the hot hand of Justin Herbert at this point. We move on to our number 6. We have ourselves Russell Wilson. You were wondering perhaps, where is Russell Wilson going to be on this list, considering he is not in the top 4? And he's at my number 6 this week because as of late, Russell Wilson's been on a little bit of a decline. If you guys go and you look at the game logs of last season, it is very reminiscent of what is happening right now. Russell Wilson starts off really hot for the first quarter, I would say maybe first half of the season, first 6 to 8 games, and then he kind of falls off a little bit. Maybe that's because the offense themselves starts to pull back and dial back, but I honestly think it's just because of the turnovers he's been having. Also because he's just human. He's a human. He's not a robot. He's not a machine. He's not going to be able to throw the ball, for 5 passing touchdowns every single game. It's not possible. And of course, defenses practice too. They're going to prepare for him, and they've prepared well for him over the last couple weeks. Him coming off of a 197 passing yard, 2 passing touchdown performance with 42 rushing yards. Getting Chris Carson back definitely makes a difference. He is a far more significantly better receiving back in comparison to what they have with Carlos Hyde right now and what they've been dealing with DJ Dallas, Alex Collins, Bo Scarborough in the last couple weeks. So again, I think that definitely helps them. But this upcoming week, they take on the Philadelphia Eagles. I think regardless of what the Eagles can put in front of him, Russell Wilson is going to succeed. But if they're ever going to design runs for Russell Wilson, I think this is the week. In the last couple weeks against the Philadelphia Eagles, we've seen quarterbacks absolutely torch them on the ground. Lamar Jackson went for 108 on them. Daniel Jones, 92. And in the other game, Daniel Jones for 64 and 1 touchdown. Quarterbacks that, yes, you may even think like, Daniel Jones really running for that much against the Eagles. My goodness, it is wide open. They are just allowing, the defensive line, though they don't really anticipate Daniel Jones to keep the ball on an option, they got to be able to respect it. I think if, in fact, they add a little bit more of that this upcoming week for Russell Wilson, he gets extra points on the ground. He's already going to get it done through the air with Lockett and, of course, DK Metcalf. I'm just hoping they can get him some more rushing yards, more opportunity there. Just keep him healthy, but know that there's an opportunity there to be had. My number 7 for this week is Aaron Rodgers, and he's been on a different level. He really has. 29 total passing touchdowns thus far this season. He's coming off of a performance against one of the best defenses in the National Football League, a defense that I'm honestly scared to play Tannehill against this week for a reason. He put up 311 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Obviously, they fumbled and could have easily won in overtime if that fumble did not occur. But as of right now, Aaron Rodgers has been playing fantastic. Against whatever defense you put in front of him, it doesn't really matter. He's been playing great. You play against the Chicago Bears, a division rival, a team that they may be on a skid, 4-game losing streak, and they've been giving up 2+ touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks for the last 4 games. It just seems like the trend is going in the direction to lean in the favor of Aaron Rodgers. He's definitely going to be able to pass the ball for the majority of the game, succeed in doing so, and if in fact they do, he's got great weapons to be able to catch the ball and deliver a great performance. Again, there really isn't much to talk about Aaron Rodgers. He gets his job done every single week. He's put up consecutive performances of 2+ touchdowns, 3-4 touchdowns at times, and we can't complain about it. I'm excited about his potential this week and should be a fantastic play as my number 7. Number 8 is Taysom Hill. You may be thinking, Andrew, holy moly, Taysom Hill at number 8. Yeah, he pretty much is Cam Newton with a better offense surrounding him. And what I mean by that is we're talking about a quarterback that is primarily a rusher and is going to find majority of his fantasy value from the running game. Just this past week, 51 rushing yards, had himself 2 rushing touchdowns. Those seem like Cam Newton numbers, right? We've seen Cam Newton put up exact numbers like that. And of course, throw for 0 passing touchdowns and interceptions. So these are pretty reminiscent in my eyes of that kind of contribution. And I think if in fact you play against the Denver Broncos, a defense that in my opinion isn't great, and you can accompany your performance on the ground like that with a couple extra dump offs to Alvin Kamara, maybe he finds himself in the end zone, or with Michael Thomas, then you can go ahead and just take advantage. The Denver Broncos defense is not that good. We've seen it week over week as the last couple of weeks. We even talked about it earlier today with the Michael Thomas segment of the wide receiver video. They've given up a lot of points to opposing number 1 wide receivers as of late, whether it was Julio, whether it was DK Metcalf. It didn't matter. They were getting torched. So again, I anticipate Taysom Hill to have himself a pretty good game here. For those of you who are benefited from him at the tight end position and or have already left him at the tight end position, for those of you who play on ESPN, you can theoretically not change your lineup, leave him at tight end and use him. Again, your commissioner might be a little upset about that, but that is always a possibility of executing. We move on to number 9. We have Ben Roethlisberger. So Big Ben all season long has been fantastic. There's only been 1 game in which he's had less than 2 passing touchdowns. So consistently, he is putting up 2 passing touchdowns. He did so against the Baltimore Ravens the last time they faced. And even though his passing yardage wasn't as grandiose as we may have wanted, 400 or 311, upwards of that number, it was still, getting the job done. And that's all you really want, pretty much want from Ben Roethlisberger. Their game is going to be delayed this week. It's going to be postponed to the Sunday evening game, 1 o'clock. So even though that's the case, I'm not too worried about it. I still think that the Baltimore Ravens are in trouble. I think from what the Tennessee Titans were able to do against them, especially in the passing game, kind of gave me a little bit of hope that, of course, this wide receiver core, along with Ben Roethlisberger, is going to be able to contribute and deliver a great performance. We've seen Eric Ebron even score against them the last time they faced. So as long as they continue to protect Ben Roethlisberger, who's been sacked 0 times in the last 3 games, he's going to continue to be able to perform. I expect him to do well, especially with Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams, the interior defensive lineman, out for the Baltimore Ravens this upcoming week. And of course, the entire situation of a lot of players testing positive. There is a potential that you could see more defenders missing out this week and potentially see Ben Roethlisberger just picking apart a half-filled defense of the Baltimore Ravens. I expect him to play well as my number 9. We have the number 10 quarterback of Derek Carr. So Derek Carr is coming off a great performance, 275 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Derek Carr this season has been far better than he's been in the past, but there are two Derek Carrs. There's Derek Carr in a competitive game in which the team and the defense of the other team is definitely playing well, and his team is definitely giving up a lot of points, and he's got to have to come back out every single drive and throw the ball and consistently score. If and when those are the games, Derek Carr is a beautiful fantasy quarterback to start. But in the games that they come out and they completely blow out their opposition, which they've done multiple times in the last couple of weeks, specifically, of course, with the Denver Broncos most recently and the Cleveland Browns. When they've gone ahead and done that and they've relied upon the running game and ran the ball upwards of 30 times in those singular games, it has been a hard opportunity to potentially think, hey, you know what, Derek Carr is a great play this week. Because when you think about the opportunity against Atlanta this week, they could blow them out. They truly could. And in those games, there was 3 consecutive games in which the Raiders won, and Derek Carr did not have over 200 passing yards. So that's my biggest fear with Derek Carr. But that being said, I think Atlanta could have an opportunity to come out this week and put up a good performance against the Las Vegas Raiders and give them a run for their money. Again, Las Vegas Raiders cannot stop the run as well as many people think. If Todd Gurley's healthy, I know he missed practice earlier today. We're going to keep that up to date and keep it going. But if he's healthy and ready to go, he should be able to execute and play well against this defense. Hopefully, Julio can play. I doubt he will, but either way, I think that this is going to be a one-sided affair in which Derek Carr should be able to score. There will be some resistance from the Atlanta Falcons, especially as they are one of the better run-stopping defenses, and it will allow Derek Carr to get more opportunities through the air and be able to produce some fantasy points for us. We have number 11, Tom Brady, coming off of perhaps one of the worst performances I've seen Tom Brady produce in a while. I mean, if you go back to 2019 and you watch some of those games against the Bills, those are bad. I mean, his passing completion percentage is all over the place. He's throwing interceptions, making terrible mistakes. But in terms of what he did on Monday night, I'm a Rams fan. I'm watching that game very closely, and I'm thinking to myself, that is not the Tom Brady that, I remember. That's not the guy that beat us in the Super Bowl a couple years back. This is a different player. And even though he was still able to, muster out 2 passing touchdowns and 216 passing yards, he was still turning over the ball far too much. This upcoming week, they play against the Kansas City Chiefs. If Tom Brady is not up to par and is not able to consistently move the ball down the field and at least string together multiple first downs and keep drives alive, then they're going to be in trouble. Because again, this Kansas City secondary is their best aspect of their defense. And, to be honest, you're going to have to pass the ball. You really will have to, because that is where your strength lies in this offense. I hope Tom Brady can pull it together and produce some fantasy points for you guys this upcoming week. I'm anticipating him to do so. I have him at number 11 for that exact reason. I think this is a matchup in which he definitely is going to have to air it out a lot. And in doing so, we'll find some fantasy value. He's my number 11. We move on to number 12. We have ourselves Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is a great player. But my issue is, what are we going to see from him against Pittsburgh? The last time he faced Pittsburgh had a 46% passing completion percentage. That's awful. But that being said, he's coming off of a performance of 186 passing yards and a touchdown. That's not good either. So do I have any hope in Lamar? Not really. I'm really worried about him, to be honest. I think if, in fact, Pittsburgh gets after him, they still, in this game, will not have Ronnie Stanley because, of course, he's out for the season. So they're missing their biggest piece, the blind side of that offensive line. And yes, Lamar Jackson can run the ball for 50-plus yards in 5 consecutive games. But unless he's going to be able to get it done through the air, because again, you're not going to be able to run the ball the entire time against Pittsburgh, it's going to be tough for him to be able to find some fantasy relevance this upcoming week. I'm worried about it. I still have hope because in a 4-point per passing touchdown league, he could string together a great performance of 70 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown and make his entire week just purely based off that. So again, the upside there is very enticing for fantasy owners, for those of you who have Lamar Jackson. But again, be careful because the matchup could be one of a trap. We move on to our number 13, Kirk Cousins. Yes, Kirk Cousins has been deceptively good in terms of fantasy production as of late. In 5 out of the last 6 games, he has had 2 passing touchdowns or more. I mean, that in itself, a fantastic number to put up. This past week, coming off of the game in which he put 314 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns against the Dallas Cowboys secondary, has the privilege of playing against the Carolina Panthers. I know the Panthers have been playing well in terms of their secondary, but just looking at the last couple performances, the Panthers against Patrick Mahomes went for 372 and 4 passing touchdowns. Brady, just this past week, 2 weeks ago, went for 341 and 3 passing touchdowns. So As of late, though, Kirk Cousins is not up the level of a Brady or a Mahomes. He definitely has shown that as of the last 5 out of the last 6 weeks, he has been in consistent quarterback play, and he's utilizing more of Adam Thielen every single week and getting Justin Jefferson more involved in this offense. And in my opinion, of course, they're going to be able to run the ball, but when the play action strikes, Kirk Cousins should be able to score for you. Moving on to our number 14, we have ourselves Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones is a player that a lot of you may be avoiding, and you may be thinking, Andrew, you're kind of going off on tilt right now. Well, I'm not really, because the Cincinnati matchup is beautiful. And to be honest, from weeks 6 through 10, obviously Daniel Jones was on a bye week in week 11, so we don't count that. But from week 6 through 10, Daniel Jones in a 4-point per passing touchdown format has been the number 13 overall quarterback. Pretty good number there. On top of it, he's the number 3 quarterback in terms of rushing yards this season with 384. Only behind, of course, Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. May have been a surprise to you. I think Daniel Jones, his mobility, his ability to, at least as of late, get it done through the air, and the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals, my goodness, you want to hear how many passing touchdowns they've allowed in the last 7 games? 2, 2, 3, 5, 2, 4, and 1. They've given up a bunch of points to opposing quarterbacks. They will have Ryan Finley under center. Their offense will not be able to move the ball, and if and when that is the case, the Giants will make them punt, and Daniel Jones will have more opportunities. I think, honestly, Daniel Jones, the ability to run the ball, gives him an extra boost of value. Again, we talked about it a little bit earlier when I was talking about the matchup against Philadelphia. Daniel Jones, in the 2 games he played against them, had over 150 rushing yards against that defense and a rushing touchdown. So again, I think he's got some capabilities that a lot of people aren't really anticipating, and that is why I'm going to go ahead and throw him up on here. Somewhat of a hidden gem, but I like him either way. Number 15 is Cam Newton. He's coming off of a game in which, of course, he had to throw for majority of the time. 365 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. Didn't get anything done on the ground. Plays against the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals this season have given up at least 1 passing touchdown to every single quarterback they've played. Great, because that's all you need from Cam Newton. Just 1 passing touchdown. The rest, all you need is rushing yards. And in fact, the Arizona Cardinals cannot stop running quarterbacks. Let's go ahead and let's take a gander and see what they've given up to running quarterbacks. Russell Wilson, 42 rushing yards. Josh Allen, 38. Tua, 35. Russell Wilson, 84. Joe Flacco, 20. Teddy Bridgewater, 32. They give up yards on the ground to quarterbacks. They are not running their pass rush lanes. They are not able to run down these quarterbacks. And I honestly think that if Cam Newton comes to town, is able to complete a passing touchdown, get his yardage through the air, and accompany that with his normal 50 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, he ends up becoming a fantastic fantasy play this week. And obviously doesn't have as much upside, in my opinion, in comparison to a Taysom Hill. And that is why I, kind of compared them earlier. But again, still has some valuable, prospect or assets to him that is going to give him the nudge over other players this upcoming week in my eyes. The last player I wanted to mention is Matt Ryan. So here's my only concern. I have a hard time not putting Matt Ryan on the list. I truly do, because even though he's been incredibly inconsistent this season, he puts up single-digit performances more than just about anybody. I think to myself, he plays against Las Vegas. He's got to be able to score points, even if he doesn't have Julio out there. He'll find Zach Kesius for a 90-yard touchdown. He'll do something crazy like that. That's just what Matt Ryan does. So I have hope in him, and I have hope that he could potentially get it done. My only concern, and the one thing that might be the last nail in the coffin, and maybe the reason why you shouldn't play Matt Ryan, but I want to share this with you so that you understand, so that we have all the ample information going into this week. In the 2 games in which Julio has not played, Matt Ryan has only thrown 1 passing touchdown in those 2 games combined. So the offense, when Julio's not there, is a struggle. They run the ball a lot, and they get a lot of rushing touchdowns in those games. I'm just concerned that if Julio doesn't play, Matt Ryan might not even be a top 16 play. But for now, we leave him on the list. Rankings are always subject to change. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Those are my top 16 quarterback rankings for Week 12 of the 2020 fantasy football season. If you haven't yet already, subscribe to the channel, like down below, join the Discord server. And until tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'll see you guys. Peace.